Good evening. Bit of an experiment this evening. Right, I'm going to be making Russian Imperial Stout. So if you'll bear with me just a few moments, I'm just going to read you this. I'll put the link and everything else in the description. Right, Russian Imperial Stout, 20 litres. Russian Imperial Stout, also known as Imperial Stout, was so named from the circumstances of the time. In the 18th century, strong stouts and porters were exported from England to a number of northern European countries. The high level of alcohol evolved out of necessity, as this prevented the brew from freezing when in transit. This style of stout was especially popular in Russia, particularly with the imperial court, and became so named Russian or Imperial Stout. Russian Imperial Stout continued to be exported to the Baltic region right up to the start of World War I. Russian Imperial Stout is an excellent beer to watch develop for several years with bottle age. When young, it may be strongly alcoholic with powerful roasted character and a very bitter finish. With years of age, the alcoholic and roasted characteristics meld together and the bitterness softens to produce Madeira-like characteristics. Generally, Russian Imperial Stout carries less fizz and should be served at about 15 degrees centigrade. This style of beer should appeal to anybody who likes aged fortified wine or dark fruitcake. This brew is a serious stout, intensely dark, high in alcohol, syrupy, bittersweet with excellent aging potential. Fermentation of this brew requires the capacity for controlling ample foam. Now it then goes on to list the ingredients, which is what we'll do here. So we have a Cooper's 1.7 kilogram dark ale, a Cooper's 1.7 kilogram stout, and a Cooper's 1.7 kilogram lager. Now, just to be clear, I have nothing to do with Cooper's whatsoever. This is the recipe I've found, and the links take me to their products, so that's fine. So I'm not advertising them particularly, just that's what I'm using. Kilogram of sugar, just good old normal sugar. And it says a few important points. Fermentation activity is volcanic, so be prepared. If not using, there's something called a DIY beer kit, I'm not interested. A second vessel should be on hand for racking the brew on day 3 of the ferment. This can be a normal 30 litre fermentation vessel. This brew requires sturdy glass bottles suitable for home brewing and long-term storage. So either glass or obviously PET. So, what else it says? Right, colour, black. Body, heavy. Bitterness, high. Approximate alcohol level, 9.2% ABV. And it's naturally carbonated. So, that's what it is. That's what we've got. So we've got the dark ale. When it decides to focus, there we go. Right, the stout and the lager. Now I did wonder with these kits whether the yeasts were any different, because I've been looking at the ingredients and I think that all this is really is just because there's nothing, there's no what's the word I'm looking for, variety of yeast, so I think it's just a bog standard generic brewing yeast. So there's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. It's this is the stuff that's important. The yeast has one job, and that's to ferment the sugar. So the basic methodology is this, and it is 9:45 in the evening, so I don't know whether I'm going to do this bit this evening, but the methodology is this. You mix the 3 yeasts into 250 millilitres of warm water, cover them, put them to one side. pour all of these tins, open them up and pour them all into your fermentation vessel. There's mine, it's quite a large one. Then put the yeast in and we leave it to ferment. Now what I am going to do, I'm going to put these to soak in some very hot water, because that softens the contents up inside. It makes it much easier to get it all out. So I'm going to get some hot water going. As I say, I think I'll probably do this in the morning, if I'm being honest. I want to try and catch this fermentation if it's that vigorous. Make sure it doesn't spill out. So we'll come back in the morning, I'll mix the yeasts up and we'll crack on. But there we go, and that's a beer I've been doing. Right, there we go, back shortly. Okay, I'm going to take the plunge. So basically, I'm going to take our 3 packets of yeast. I have there a little bit of tepid water. I've got the cans just sitting in some very hot water. Now let's see if any of the yeast looks any different. As I said, there's nothing to indicate whether there's any particular variety of yeast being used. Certainly doesn't look any different. It's not a different colour or a different texture. Now, I genuinely think that that's the same yeast. So we'll just give that bugger, that's wow. Right, sorry about that. I've just flicked, turned my cans over. So we'll just give that yeast a quick stir. Like that. And we'll just put that to one side, and hopefully within a few minutes that should start to expand. I've got my jug, 1 kilogram of sugar. I'm just using regular caster sugar because it's all I've got, but sugar. And I've marked my container with a 20 litre mark just here. Okay, they've just come out of some sort of very hot water. You certainly don't want them to boil. If they explode, you'll be in for a right shock. So, can opener. And let's start with, this is the lager. This is when I discovered that my posh can opener can't open the can, so being very careful. Okay, so that's the lager. This one is the dark ale. Some cans this tin opener, it really does struggle with. Some it's fine, others it just, as I say, it just really struggles with. And this of course is one it's really struggling with. Oh, tish and pish. Right, I shall be back in a moment when I've opened the cans. Okay, so after quite a battle, I've got the lids off, and the yeast, as you can see, is now foaming up wonderfully. I'm now just boiling up, so we're on to the instructions. So step 1, prior to mixing the brew, rehydrate the 3 sachets of yeast, blah 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 blah, which we've done. Add the contents of the 3 beer kits and the dextrose, or sugar in my case, to the fermentation vessel and dissolve with 4 litres of hot water. Now I've just got 4 litres of water coming to boil on the stove. What I am going to do is use that 4 litres to rinse the cans out, because you'd be amazed how much of this stuff stays behind. So that's why I was saying warm the cans up. So what I'll do, I'm just going to transfer those into the vessel. So this one is the lager. And I don't know whether you can actually see that, but there's a heck of a lot of liquid stays in. Obviously we don't want to waste it. So I'll put this is the stout. It really is like black treacle. And then this one's the dark ale. Everything obviously has been sterilised, and I just sterilise everything with hot water and a bit of bleach, perhaps 2 or 3 tablespoons of bleach, and then just give everything a good rinse with fresh clean water. Right, so there's still a heck of a lot of material in there which we need to get out. So once the pan has boiled up, I'll rinse these properly. Might as well put the sugar in now. So if you can see that, 1 kilogram of sugar. Right, I'm just waiting for this water to come to the boil, so I'll just put everything on pause again, like shortly. Okay, so I've rinsed the cans out thoroughly. There's a little bit of residue left in there, but not much. Done that with boiling water, so do be careful. It's very thick, syrupy stuff. And then here we have the 4 litres. And everything I've sort of rinsed out of the cans. And I'm just going to add that. Give it a bit of a stir. Because again, it's very thick, syrupy stuff. Okay. give this a really, really, really good mix. And my bucket's just cracked. So quickly, very quickly. Oh. Oh, that's a rather unfortunate turn of events. Do need to act with a bit of speed. Back shortly. Right, had a bit of a minor disaster as I was stirring that bucket. It cracked at the bottom, so I very quickly had to transfer it into that one. Anyhow, disaster averted, job done. Now I haven't pitched the yeast in there because I haven't checked the temperature, but there we go. So that's a final sort of liquor that we're gonna ferment. So I'm gonna get my thermometer and let's just do a temperature check. Let's make sure it's safe for the yeast. Just make sure you give your thermometer just a quick dabbing of some hot soapy water or something. The last thing we want to be doing is introducing unwanted bacteria. So that's at about 33 degrees. Now, the instructions say that you want to ferment this as close to 18 degrees as possible. So at the moment, that's obviously, it's too hot. Now I do know when I do my spirits that a slower fermentation tends to give you a cleaner final product. You get less fusels and other impurities. So whether that's the same here or not, I don't know, but certainly that's reading 31, 32, about 34 degrees, 33 degrees centigrade. So it's too hot. So I'm going to put the lid on and I'm going to let it cool down. I'm just going to keep monitoring it, and the room temperature is about 18 degrees C in here. So I'll just let it settle at room temperature. I should have done the yeast earlier or later, but not to worry, this isn't the end of the world. Quick taste test. It's very sweet, obviously, but very strange. Right, okay, I'm going to do it now. It is important before you pitch your yeast to try and get as much oxygen into the liquid as you can. And the reason is that in the presence of oxygen, yeast will replicate. When that oxygen is expired, that is when they will start to produce alcohol and carbon dioxide. And I'm not going to use an airlock because this will form a barrier of carbon dioxide here, so nothing will get in. Not much will survive in that. So here we go. I'm pitching the yeast blob. the action of the yeast will also produce heat. So again, it's important that we don't let this get too hot. So I'm just going to gently agitate that. The yeast will sort itself out. It'll work its way through, I have no doubt about that. And then I'm just going to put the lid on. I'm going to snap it on just so it's... The last thing I want is anything like fruit flies or anything like that getting into it. But I don't want the lid to be airtight. So there we go, there's a bit of a gap there. So the air can get out, but nothing should be able to get in. And that is it. That's done. I'm just going to leave that now. And let's see what happens. See if that fermentation is as vigorous as they claim it is. Should be interesting in the morning. Good morning. It's been about 12 hours since I did this. Oh good grief, look at that. So they were quite right. As you can see, there's a heck of a lot of foam. So that's very good. So I think I'll give that a quick stir, and I'll just check the temperature in a bit and we'll leave that to it. Okay, it's now about 1 o'clock, so we are about 15 hours in, and it's absolutely it's fermenting like an absolute monster. I've put a weighted saucepan, that's a 5 litre saucepan, on here to try and contain it. It really is quite a vigorous fermentation, but they did say that was the case. It's just a shame that I broke my bigger vessel last night, but there we go, it's fermenting nicely. The heating belt isn't turned on. I've got a thermal camera here, so just the current house temperature is about 18.5 degrees C, which is absolutely ideal for this. So if I look again there, that's my front room, 19 degrees. This is a kit I've been doing, it's been on for about a week. Sorry, where's the 19.7? And that just shows you, I mean that's a black container, that shows you the level of heat being generated, 22 degrees C. Ideally it should be at 18, but I can't bring the temperature down any lower. I've had the window open all night. It's yeah, it's pretty vigorous. This is only an hour or so from the last video clip, but it's like the bloody Blob. So when they said that the fermentation was, and I do quote, volcanic, they weren't joking.